The Emperor of Rome rode out with the finest army in the world. He never came back. Neither did 40,000 of his men. In a single afternoon, on a dry plain in the middle of nowhere, the most powerful empire on earth watched its own army get erased. Not defeated. Not pushed back. Erased, the emperor's body was never found. No tomb, no funeral, no bones to bury. One of the most powerful men alive simply vanished into the smoke. So how does that happen? How do you lose an emperor, an army, and the illusion that Rome could not bleed, all before sundown? It starts, like most disasters, with a decision that looked smart at the time. Let's set the board. It's the year 376. Rome is not the marble fantasy you're picturing. It's tired. It's stretched. It's split down the middle into two halves, east and west, because one man can't hold the whole thing together anymore. The east is run by an emperor named Valens. And Valens is not a genius. He's not a monster either. He's a soldier's soldier who got handed a throne mostly because his brother needed someone he could trust. Valens has problems. Persia is breathing down his neck in the east. Money is tight. And he spent his whole reign feeling like the less impressive emperor. The understudy. The one nobody writes poems about. Remember that feeling. That quiet need to prove something. It's going to get a lot of people killed. Because right now, on Rome's northern border, something is about to walk out of the dark. The Goths. To Rome, they were barbarians, long-haired, foreign, dangerous. But here's the part the Romans didn't understand at first. The Goths weren't attacking. They were running. Something had come out of the east. Something the Goths had never seen before. Horse lords who appeared like a storm and disappeared just as fast. Warriors who seemed to live in the saddle. The Huns. The Huns smashed into the Gothic world and shattered it. Whole peoples picked up everything they owned and fled west, until they hit a wall they couldn't cross. The Danube River. And on the other side of it, Rome. So picture this. Tens of thousands of people. Men, women, children, the elderly, the sick, all crowded on a riverbank, terrified, hungry, begging to be let in. Not to conquer, to survive. And they send a message to Valens. Let us cross. Give us land. We'll farm it. We'll pay you. And our fighting men will join your army. Now Valens, sitting far away, does the math. Free soldiers. Free taxpayers. A new buffer against the Huns. To him, this looks like the best deal of his career. He says yes. And that yes is the first domino. Here's where it goes wrong almost immediately. Letting tens of thousands of desperate armed refugees across a river is a logistics nightmare. It needs food. It needs order. It needs Roman officials who are competent and, ideally, not evil. Rome had the wrong men for the job. The local Roman commanders looked at this flood of starving people and didn't see a crisis to manage. They saw a gold mine to squeeze, the food that was supposed to feed the refugees. They hoarded it. Then they sold it back at insane prices. We're talking about people so hungry they were eating dogs to survive. And it gets darker. The Romans started offering food in exchange for slaves. Sell us your children, and we'll feed you. Some families, watching their kids starve, had no choice. Reports say the going rate was 1 dog for 1 child. 1 dog for a child. Sit with that for a second. Because the Goths did. They remembered every insult, every theft, every kid sold for scraps. You don't forget that. You bank it. And you wait. The Romans had just taken a desperate, broken people and slowly turned them into something far more dangerous. A furious one. The spark comes at a dinner party. Of course it does. A Roman commander invites the Gothic leaders to a feast, smiles in their faces, and tries to have them murdered. A classic Roman move. Eliminate the leadership, scatter the rest. It fails. The main Gothic leader, a sharp, patient man named Fritigern, talks his way out, gets back to his people, and basically says one thing. Enough, and just like that, the refugee crisis becomes a war. The Goths erupt across the province of Thrace. And here's the brutal irony Rome never saw coming. Many of these Goths had already served in the Roman army. They knew Roman tactics. They knew Roman weak points. They knew exactly how Romans fought, because Rome had taught them. For 2 years, Thrace burns, the Goths raid, the Romans chase, nobody can land a knockout blow. It's messy, it's grinding, it's embarrassing. And word of all this reaches Valens, who is far away dealing with Persia. So Valens does what any proud emperor would do. He drops everything, makes a quick peace in the east, and marches his best troops home to crush these ungrateful barbarians personally. The finest army in the Eastern Empire is now on the road, and it's heading straight for a city called Adrianople. Now Valens isn't completely alone in this. He has a nephew, Gratian, the young emperor of the western half. And Gratian is bringing his own battle-hardened army east to help. Together, 2 Roman armies would be overwhelming. Unstoppable, the Goths wouldn't stand a chance. All Valens has to do is wait. Just wait for Gratian. That's it. That's the whole job. But remember that feeling from earlier, the understudy? The emperor nobody wrote poems about. Gratian had just won a massive victory of his own in the west, crushed an enemy, covered himself in glory, and now he was riding to Valens' rescue like a hero. The last thing Valens wanted was to share this win with his golden boy nephew. He didn't want to be saved. He wanted to be the savior. So when his scouts brought him a report, Valens listened very, very closely. The report said the Gothic army was small, around 10,000 fighters. 10,000. Valens had more than that. A lot more. Veterans, heavy infantry, cavalry, the pride of the East. To Valens, the math was suddenly beautiful. Why split the glory with Gratian against 10,000 barbarians he could swat himself? Here's the problem with that report. It was wrong. The Goths weren't 10,000. The true number was far higher, possibly 2 or 3 times that. And worse, the scouts had missed something enormous. The Gothic cavalry, their hardest-hitting force, wasn't even at the camp. It was out roaming the countryside, gathering supplies. A huge mounted hammer somewhere over the horizon, completely off Rome's radar. So Valens is about to march into a fight thinking he outnumbers the enemy, when in reality, he's the one walking into the trap. His advisors are split. Some say wait for Gratian. Some say strike now. And the emperor, with something to prove, already knows which voice he wants to hear. He gives the order. We attack. August 9th, 378. It is brutally hot. The kind of heat that bakes the air. And Valens makes the army march for it. Roughly 8 miles over rough ground. In full armor, under a punishing sun, to reach the Goths. By the time the Romans arrive, they are already wrecked. Exhausted, dripping, dying of thirst. They've had no proper food and no rest. And what do they find? The Goths, sitting pretty on top of a hill, inside a giant circle of wagons. A mobile fortress, shade, supplies, and high ground. Then the Goths do something genuinely clever and genuinely cruel. They set the fields on fire. The dry grass and crops all around the Roman position go up in flames. Now the exhausted, thirsty Romans aren't just standing in the August heat. They're standing in smoke and fire, eyes stinging, throats closing, slowly cooking inside their own armor. And the Gothic leader Fritigern? He's not in a hurry. He sends out messengers. Let's talk peace. Let's negotiate. Let's take our time. It's a stall. A beautiful, deliberate stall. Because every minute the Romans stand there baking, Fritigern's missing cavalry is galloping closer and closer to the battlefield. The trap isn't just set, it's tightening. And here's where one moment, one tiny lapse in discipline, decides everything. While the negotiations are still going, while no order to attack has been given, a couple of Roman units on the edge of the line lose their patience. Maybe they thought they saw an opening. Maybe the heat snapped something. Whatever the reason, they charge. Without orders. Without the plan. Without the whole army ready. And just like that, the negotiations are over. The stall worked perfectly, and now the battle has begun on the Goths' terms. At the Goths' chosen moment, the Roman attack on the wagon fort stalls out almost instantly. Of course it does. They're charging uphill into a wall of wagons, exhausted and disorganized. And then, you hear it before you see it. Thunder from the wrong direction. The Gothic cavalry has come home. They hit the Roman flank like a hammer dropped from heaven, thousands of mounted warriors slamming into the side of an army that was tired, strung out, and looking the other way. The Roman cavalry, caught completely off guard, breaks almost immediately and runs. And that's the moment the trap closes for good. Because now the Roman infantry, the real heart of the army, is exposed. Their cavalry is gone. Their flank is open, and the Goths come pouring down off that hill from the front, while the cavalry crushes them from the side. The Romans get pushed in. And in. And in. The most disciplined infantry in the world gets squeezed into a space too small to fight in. Men packed shoulder to shoulder so tightly they can't raise their shields, can't swing their swords, can't even lift their arms. Ancient writers describe it in horrifying detail. Soldiers crushed so close together that the dead couldn't fall down. Spears snapping because there was no room to use them. Dust so thick you couldn't see the blow coming that killed you. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a slaughter pen. And the Romans knew it. You can feel the panic in the old accounts. Men trampling each other to get away. Whole units dissolving. The ground turning to mud, not from rain, but from blood. The army that marched out that morning as the pride of Rome was being butchered where it stood. 2/3 of it. Gone. We're talking tens of thousands of professional soldiers, generals, senior officers, commanders, wiped out in a few hours of chaos on a burning field. It was the worst defeat Rome had suffered in centuries. The kind of catastrophe they'd only whispered about from the old days. The disasters against Hannibal. And now it was happening again, in real time, to the army that was supposed to be untouchable. But there's one body the Goths really wanted. The Emperor. And here's the part that still gives historians chills. Nobody knows for sure how Valens died. There are 2 stories, and both are grim. The first is simple. Somewhere in that crush, in the dust and the screaming, the Emperor of Rome was struck down by an arrow or a blade and fell among his men. No crown, no glory, just one more body in the pile. Anonymous, unrecognized, lost. The second story is worse, and somehow more cinematic. In this version, Valens is wounded. His bodyguards drag him off the field to a little farmhouse nearby. A peasant's cottage. They carry him upstairs, barricade the doors, and try to treat him while the world ends outside. Then the Goths arrive. They don't know who's inside. They just know there are Romans in the building, and they want them out. They try to break in. The bodyguards fight them off from the windows. So the Goths stop trying to break in. They pile wood against the walls, and they burn the whole house to the ground. The Roman soldiers inside, and possibly the Emperor of Rome himself, burned alive in a nameless farmhouse. And the Goths walked away, never knowing they had just cremated the most powerful man in the East. That's why there was no body, no tomb, no funeral. The ruler of half the Roman world simply ceased to exist. So why does any of this actually matter? Why is this one bad afternoon such a big deal? Because Adrianople didn't just kill an army, it killed an idea. For centuries, the deal was simple. Rome's legions were the best in the world. Barbarians lost. That was just how it worked. It was the bedrock everything else stood on. Adrianople smashed that into pieces. The Goths didn't just beat Rome, they annihilated a Roman field army led by an emperor in person. And everyone, inside and outside the empire, saw it. The fear was gone, the spell was broken, and the Goths didn't leave. They were now a powerful armed nation living inside the empire's borders, and Rome was too weak to push them back out. The new emperor who came next had no choice but to cut a deal and let them stay, on their own terms, fighting under their own leaders. For the first time, Rome wasn't absorbing outsiders. It was hosting a rival it couldn't control. And those same Goths? The ones Rome starved, cheated, and sold dogs to. A generation later, their descendants would march on the city of Rome itself. And in the year 410, they would do the unthinkable. They would sack the eternal city. The road to that moment, the slow-motion collapse of the Western Roman Empire, runs straight back through this one burning field. Back to a faulty scouting report. Back to a stall in the August heat. Back to a couple of soldiers who charged without orders, and back to one emperor who wanted the glory so badly he couldn't bring himself to wait a few more days for help. Valens got his battle. He didn't have to share it with anyone. He just had to pay for it with his army, his empire's confidence, and his own life. The Emperor of Rome rode out that morning with the finest army in the world. By sundown, the army was gone. The emperor was gone. And Rome, though it didn't fully realize it yet, had just watched the beginning of its own ending. One afternoon, one decision, and nothing was ever the same again.